Hello and welcome to a new Italian P&C video. So, just to premise before we actually get into the topic of this video, I know it's been a while since I've made a last video, but to my excuse, I would say, it's just been a long creator block that I've been going through, where although I knew the types of content that I could have made, I really didn't have the inspiration to actually make them, and I didn't want to force myself to make it because after all, YouTube is a hobby for me more than all, and if I wasn't having fun making what I'm doing, then I shouldn't do it. So that's why today, before we actually get back to the usual topics, so you know, the world beyond the ice walls, more like mysterious maps, I actually want to develop and talk about this topic that is right in your screen right now, and that is the post-war New World map. So although I knew the context of this before I actually got into it, since I did see it far back in the day, I got it once again under my eyes recently after somebody posted it on my server, so congrats to him for posting it, because it actually made me go into a spiral of actually searching what this was, so thank you. Unnamed Discord member that I cannot remember right now, but basically yeah, this is a map made in 1942, right after, well, not really after the start, but during the Second World War. And during the Second World War, there were many people which of course were seeing the situation that the world was developing into and really hoping that it would get better. Of course, in Europe, there were many people with different ideologies that had this idea, but also in the United States, in the New World, there were people that were thinking the same thing. It is not an alternate history map, not a history map, but it is instead a future projection of what might have been after the end of the Second World War. So I find it very interesting, and I hope you guys will as well. So first of all, a bit of context. This was made right before the attack on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese Navy, the Imperial Japanese Navy. Let's just zoom into Japan for a little bit. This was Japan, I mean this is Japan, but during the Second World War Japan was way larger. It encompassed islands all across the Pacific and parts of East and Southern East Asia. And of course they threatened the, I guess, US, I think it was a territory back then, not a state yet, but yeah, still the US territory of the Hawaiian Islands. And so yeah, you know, the whole Pearl Harbor deal with they bombed it and, you know, provoked the entry of the United States into the Second World War. So right before that happens, this man called Morris Gomberg, which was a man born in Philadelphia by a family of Jewish and Russian descent, he actually tried to envision a world which wouldn't have the, you know, the situation that could bring to a new great conflict erupting. So once again, I will notice that this, you know, this name right here, post-war New World map, is very interesting because first of all, we're not just talking about the post-war map, we're just talking about post-war New World. So they were, and I will just zoom in, they're envisioning something called a New World moral order. Where is this idea coming from? This idea of a need for a new world order. I'm sure many of you already have heard the phrase, and I will not delve too much into like the concept of new world order, since there are many theories on what this means, what the objective of the people that are talking about new world orders is, and what the like the end game is of that. But this is like one of the earliest times that this, you know, this sentence, this phrase was ever put into effect. And that is why it interests me, because it was put into effect not only in like an economic or social sense, but even in a sense of borders and maps, like literally geography and how political geography would develop and how states would run their things in a period where, you know, just the world was ending its maybe most bloody conflict in history. So that's where I was kind of going. And whoever said this sentence, this New World moral order thing, well, it actually comes from the President of the United States, Roosevelt, where he talked about the 4 freedoms speech, where he made a speech talking about the 4 freedoms, and it discussed the need for a New World moral order after the end of the Second Great Conflict, or Second World War. So now that we have the basis for this, and by the way, this whole entire speech is like shortened right here at the bottom of the map, so it's not even like an inspiration. It literally is where this idea is coming from. So even very, very strong political figures that were heading countries at the time were making proposals for the concept of a new world order based around morals, which needed new morals, or that's what he was saying. So for this map, we're seeing a complete rehaul of the world after the war. So now that the context has been made, let's actually try talking about what is going on in this map. So first of all, I think the first thing people will notice is that there are great megastates, superstates, superpowers instead of multiple small independent countries, which is what has going on now and what was going on to a certain level of extent before the Second World War. So of course we can all notice the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. This is, in other words, the USSR, the great communist power that took hold of Eurasia or Asia and parts of Europe during the times of the Russian Revolution, and that after the actual Second World War ended up controlling half of Europe as well through the Iron Curtain system, which maintained the eastern part of Europe under their, I guess, more direct but not like annexed, but still direct control, also through the organization of the Warsaw Pact. But in this scenario, in this envisioned future, which once again, I am talking about a vision that was like meant to happen, so for him, this is permanent peace, freedom, justice, security, world reconstruction, and this Maurice Gomberg agrees with all these topics, and this is how he envisions the world. And he envisions it with an even larger USSR. So instead of thinking of, you know, maybe the world needs less USSR for betterment and peace, he actually wanted an even bigger one and an even stronger one that not only had, you know, the control of Ukraine. Actually, I don't think I can say that. That not only had the control of this part of the world and this part of the world, but also had the control of, you know, the eastern part of Europe. So in this map, we can see that all the Eastern European countries have been annexed directly into the USSR. They haven't been made puppet states as they were in our timeline, but instead have directly become SSRs, which are Soviet Socialist Republics, and they're all parts of this huge USSR. We have some very, very small independent states, like for example, we can see here there's Eire, which means Ireland in their own language, Irish. We have a couple independent states like Albania, Greece, or Federal Republic of Greece, as this is called right here. We even have Turkey right here, which is apparently independent, at least looks like it, although it does share somewhat of a color with China, but I think that is just a coincidence, or at least that doesn't seem to be, you know, something that alludes to Turkey being some sort of Chinese colony. And also in this map we can see something very interesting here. We have something called Hebrew land, which I believe this person was thinking that would become, you know, we all know the state we're thinking right now, that one state in the Middle East, right there in that region. YouTube won't like when I actually mention it, but you know what I'm talking about, basically. And yeah, so this guy in 1942, way before it actually was established as an independent country, was already envisioning it, and not only that, it was actually way larger than it ended up being. In fact, it included all of Jordan, even parts of modern-day Saudi Arabia, Syria, maybe even Egypt to some extent. So yeah, it was just way bigger and independent. Strangely independent, considering that the world is like all made up of like huge countries, but this place is independent. Okay, interesting. What else? We have other very interesting things. We have a united Scandinavia, or United States of Scandinavia. So he envisioned a united northern countries of Europe, so Denmark, Sweden and Norway, all united under a single state. But not only that, he also envisioned Iceland as a US protectorate, and not this should shock you considering the current situation, Greenland as a direct part of the United States of America. So in this vision of the future, not only the US annexes Canada, which somewhat makes sense because it's like directly on the border, and of course they all speak an English language, like they both speak English, they have a somewhat similar history, although we have to mention of course Quebec, the French part of North America, with Quebec, Montreal, and so on and so forth. But yeah, they annex Canada, but not only that, they also annex Greenland. And this is very, very relevant to what is happening today, as you probably already know, since it's been on the news and the President of the United States is talking about annexing Greenland now. So for this guy in 1942 to make a map showing Greenland as a United States territory, or maybe even a state, we don't know, we can actually see that there's even some cities here. Christianshavn, I can't really read this letter, but it's gotta be something like that. Holstenborg, Umivik, these might be the cities before they were changed from Danish names to native Inuit names, although to not confuse myself, I will not say I'm sure about that. So that is interesting, for sure. Not only that, the United States also annexed all of Mexico and also Central America and also the Caribbean. So the United States is a super country. It's like huge. It encompasses the entirety of North America, and not only that, also Greenland, Protectorate on Iceland, and also, as all of this wasn't enough, they control the islands off the coast of the Atlantic. They control Bermuda, which is currently United Kingdom territory. They control the Azores and Madeira Islands, which are currently part of Portugal, Canary Islands, that are currently part of Spain, and even Cape Verde, which is an independent state right now. And as if all of that wasn't enough, again, they also control the USA Peace Security Outposts, which are apparently almost the entirety, if not the entirety, of the Pacific Ocean and its island. So the US in this vision is the global power, I assume, among with the Soviet Union. And I think we can even figure that out just by looking at this little graph here. USA and protectorates in blue account for maybe, what, 25% of the world's surface, something like that. USSR in this pink red color, and then in this dark red color we have the British Commonwealth of Nations, because if you didn't know, during the Second World War and before the Second World War, and even a bit time after the Second World War, the United Kingdom was called the British Empire, and it was the greatest empire on earth, both by land surface, population, and so on and so forth. It was the greatest state, although it was already going on its way out by the Second World War. It was already kind of imploding. In fact, India was really doing its best to, get independence. There were revolts in the African colonies. There were like the states like Canada, the Dominion of Canada, the Dominion of South Africa, Dominion of Australia, and New Zealand. They were all kind of like getting autonomy. So in this timeline, we can kind of see that they lost the majority of its empire, but they still maintain the ownership over Australia, New Zealand. For some reason, they even have parts of Indonesia and the island of Sri Lanka, or Ceylon, as mentioned right here. But I'm interested more in the fact that they own parts of Indonesia, considering that Indonesia and New Guinea weren't actually British territories ever, kind of. They were Dutch territories. And also, we can see that they own Madagascar, which is interesting. There were a lot of ideas regarding Madagascar during the Second World War, and I'm sure you know as well. And if you don't, I recommend checking them out. Looking them up, as they say. And also, it says that here these triangles are peace security bases. And although we have a lot of them, I guess of the US too, right here, Dakar, Freetown, right here on the coast of Africa, West Africa, are US bases. There are a lot, way more red ones, which seem to be British bases. So what Maurice Gomberg envisioned was the end of the British Empire as like a superstate, as it was, but instead it was going to be replaced by some sparse territories controlled by what he says the Commonwealth, British Commonwealth, and a lot of military bases and security bases spread across, all of Africa, the Mediterranean, and even parts of like the Indian Ocean. And is this Singapore? Yeah, I think this is Singapore. Interesting. It was British at some point, so makes sense. There's also other theories that are very interesting. Instead of talking about the US and the USSR, we can also talk about something called United States of Europe. So you all know about the European Union, the supranational organization that rules, or I guess holds up part of Europe right now. And in this case, the United States of Europe exists as a united country, It does not have any colonies, which was something that it used to have during that time. So like France has no colonies, Spain has no colonies, Portugal has no colonies, and neither do the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. But they are united, and I will say this is a very small European Union state. I don't know if Italy is part of it, because there is this hard border here, black hard border, but this is very small. What else we can see? We have an Arab Federation of Republics, so this is thinking of a pre-Islamic revival of Arabia and the Middle East. So in this case, this part of the Middle East is like a union of republics, of Arab republics. Yemen is divided in two, with northern Yemen being separate from southern Yemen, which is called Aden. Then we have Oman, the Gulf of Oman. Hejaz is different from Saudi Arabia, despite Saudi Arabia already annexing Hejaz even before the Second World War. Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon are all part of this federation. We have a similar scenario on a much larger scale in Africa and South America. All African countries have united in a single superstate, which can better control the population for reasons, and same can be said about South America, which has been made into this like huge supercontinent state. And something interesting for somebody like me that really likes maps and borders, you can actually see the old borders of Peru and Bolivia and Paraguay here, since Ecuador ended up getting this part of their territories annexed by Peru during that era, and Bolivia lost the Chaco region to Paraguay right around that period of time. And also in Africa, we can see that there are even larger states as states of Africa. So instead of Ghana, Guinea, Mauritania, West Sahara, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso here, and so on and so forth, we have just a huge West Africa as one of these united African states, and an equatorial Africa instead of Chad, Gabon, Congo, Central African Republic, Cameroon, and so on and so forth. We do have Ethiopia as part of this African state, but Ethiopia has sea access, which is something it misses right now. In fact, Eritrea goes all along the border here and does not let Ethiopia use its ports. So also we have Rhodesia, which is an extinct country right now. It was split between northern Rhodesia, which is now called Zambia, and southern Rhodesia, which is now called Zimbabwe. And the Union of South Africa, interestingly, does not own Southwest Africa, which was part of the Union of South Africa at that time. So very interesting divisions there in Africa in this map. I'm also noticing that the Suez Canal has maybe been expanded, since it looks very, very large, and that despite this land here, the Sinai Peninsula, which is on the border of Hebrew land, being divided by the Suez Canal from the Middle East, from Africa, it is still part of this African superstate, even if the population there is Arab. So maybe it should be part of the Arabian Federative Republics, who knows. We find a similar situation both in the Federated Republics of India and the United Republics of China. So something I'm noticing is just the amount of united something. It can be republics, socialist republics, federated republics, states. It's just everywhere. Everywhere you go, it's a union of sorts. This guy, this Maurice Gomberg, was really into the whole concept of reducing independent states and giving them all to these big federations that could control the population more easily. I wonder why. So, in the case of India, we have India, Baluchistan, Afghanistan, and also Myanmar, Nepal, and Bhutan are all part of this Federated Republics of India. Noticing the non-existence of Pakistan because it was yet to divide itself from India, since the idea wasn't, or there already, of course, since it wasn't even an independent state in 1942, that would happen around the time of independence in 1946. Neither is Bangladesh or Bengala. So interesting stuff right there. This state, by the way, would be the most populated state in humanity, surpassing any other in this map, even the entirety of Africa, by the way. This would have something akin to maybe almost 2 billion people alone. Maybe a bit less, but still around there. United Republics of China, instead, seems to be even smaller than the current one, since it is lacking the Manchurian SSR, which here is part of the Soviet Union, and I'm just noticing now the Birobidzin Jewish district of the Soviet Union. So for those that do not know, and this is still a thing in the modern-day country of Russia, there is a region called the Jewish Autonomous Oblast, and it is right here, but it's way smaller. In this map it's expanded, and it's called this way. I don't know what Birobidzan means, but you know, it's even bigger. So there's 2 Jewish states. One is Hebrew land in the Middle East, and one is Birobidzin, whatever this is. I haven't looked too much into the specific SSRs, oblasts, and so on of the Soviet Union, but they seem to be similar to the ones in our timeline, maybe just expanded. Like, for example, the entirety of Iran is part of the Soviet Union, and it wasn't even divided up, just incorporated in one byte, even if in this period of time during the Second World War, this northern part of Iran was actually divided and made into like a second Azeri state, and this eastern part was made into a Kurdish state. But in this map it's just one whole thing annexed by the Soviet Union. While the United Republics of China also includes Indochina, which includes Vietnam right here, and of course Laos, and even Cambodia. Even Thailand and Malaya are part of China, as is Korea and Inner Mongolia, and Xinjiang, also called East Turkestan, or whatever you want to call it, honestly, there's many names for this region, and also Tibet, which is even expanded compared to the modern day Tibet, which is something like this? I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting, and the only thing left to really examine is something that you might have already noticed. There is quarantined states. I'm not even kidding, that is the word that they decided to use. Quarantined. And it's quarantined Germany, which excludes the Rhine territories, but includes Austria. Quarantined Italy, which excludes, well, I guess no, it's just all of Italy, I guess. And quarantined Japan. There you go. So by the way, quarantine Japan still holds the southern Kuril Islands, which in our timeline actually were annexed by the Soviet Union. And in fact, right now there's a very harsh land dispute between the Russian Federation and Japan over these islands. So what does quarantined mean in the context of this map? Because this is supposed to be in the far future, not right now. So, like, how come these countries remain quarantined for so long? And what does quarantine mean? Are you just gonna kill their entire population? Are they like huge walls that like block them from escaping so they will never try conquering land again or something like that? I'm also noticing that they do have colors similar to like other states. So for example, quarantine Germany seems to be somewhat controlled by the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and quarantined Italy seems to be somewhat controlled by the United States of Europe. As for Japan, I think this is just a kind of neutral color, but it is similar to the United African Republics or United States of South America. I don't know if they meant it to be that way, like if it was voluntary, like why would Japan ever be controlled by Africa or South America? I don't know. But it's something they did put in the map, so I might as well mention it. But I am intrigued definitely by these like huge borders. Literally could mean anything. Maybe something horrible. And before we finish this video, why is... like, I understand why the Philippines would be American. This is the color of the United States in the map, since they were in the real timeline. But when it comes to Taiwan right here and Hainan right here, they aren't. Yet they are US's territories here, American territories, as is the, what is this called, Celebes Island and the Moluccas. So just the US is just incredibly big in this map. It is by all means a superpower country, which holds basically this entire area of the world, as well as this entire area. Insane. Well, fellas, I hope this new video was interesting to you as well. I loved discovering it and just going around the map, actually looking at it. It's so hard to get a proper high resolution map of this. Finally found it. So great stuff right there. And I hope in the next near future I can make more videos just of the usual kind I make, since this artist block or creator block hopefully finished for good. Because I am kind of tired of not making stuff. I want to go back to making stuff, you know what I mean? So once again, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a great vacation now, Easter vacation, or whatever you profess, maybe just spring break, maybe. And I will see you later. See you guys.